Hello everybody, Maria Alejandra Beccaria and I'm an active participant for the project CAFO City Co-Financing by Erasmus+. Today I will present to you a case of a study on entrepreneurship, optimism and knowledge creation in Medellin. So, this case has three main objectives, which are understand how entrepreneurship, optimism and knowledge creation can improve a society, reflecting how bad policies supporting of failed ideas may destroy optimism in a society, and evaluate alternatives for sustainable economic developments and innovation in Medellin. So, let's get started. Medellin is a Colombian city with a historical contrast. It was once considered the most violent city in the world, and nowadays it is recognized as an example of progress and development. How did a city that from 1980s to the 2000 years struggled to deal with drug cartels, violence, and their influence over politics and economy became a pole of development and progress in the 21st century? How did this transformation happen in less than 20 years? The answer for sure is not easy. Medellin has a violent political history represented in events of rural and urban violence. This violent history has several explanations, including economic pressure and political disagreements. For 1950, the urban concentration in Medellin increased unemployment and urban poverty. From 1976 to 1986, it had an average unemployment rate of 14.5%, higher by 4 points than the four main cities' unemployment rate. The unemployment and low incomes added to the rural political violence led to the emergence of illegal armed groups in some neighborhoods. Later, in the middle of 1970s, the practices of vendettas, hitmen, and informality were adopted by illegal groups dedicated to drug trafficking. Alone from 1980s to 1995, Medellin became home of the world's biggest drug cartels. Their profits were about $4 billion and supplies 80% of the cocaine consumed in the United States. But after all the violent history since the 2000 year, Medellin became an example of modernization, entrepreneurship, and urban development. Other important factor was the economy of the first decade of the 20th century. The Department of Antioquia and its capital Medellin led the exports of the country's leading commercial products, gold and coffee. The accumulation of wealth from these goods was the basis of the industrial manufacturing development of the country. The entrepreneurial capacity of the people of Antioquia led the region to occupy the first position in the number of textile factories in the country, which in 1945 accurate 67% of the manufacturing sector in Colombia. On the other hand, the end of the decade of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s was characterized by nationwide social problems, including armed conflict, drug trafficking, and economic slowdown. The social efforts were focused on reducing violence rates and strengthening the guarantee of public goods such as education, health, employment, security, and public order. These actions were reinforced by the Constitutional Assembly of 1991 that culminated in the demobilization of urban armed focus as the M19 and the modernization of the Colombian Constitution. The 1991 constitutional reforms create new instruments and mechanisms addressing innovation, entrepreneurship, and science development. Medellin growth is intimately related to entrepreneurship and optimism. Despite having a bad social condition, such as violence and poverty, the city has managed to transform itself from a failed violent city into an example of progress, innovation, and development. Hidroituango, a hydroelectric generation project including a dam in Cauca River, recently presented problems leading to project delays, increasing risk and overprices, leading it to be used as a political tool. With the arrival of Daniel Quintero, a new mayor for the 2020-2023 period, argues that the problem presented in Hidroituango are an example of collusion, corrupt association, between the public and private sectors. From this perspective, Medellin may lose optimism by rejecting the very thing that explains its progress, namely the collaboration among several sectors of the society embracing optimism and entrepreneurship. Instead, Medellin may adopt a pessimistic attitude adopting to the precautionary principle. The dilemma of this case is how must a society face political and economic projects and propose solutions without failing a pessimistic attitude that stops the progress? Several other factors also contribute to Medellin's modernization. A new national constitution 1991, the fight against drug cartels and the signature of the peace agreement with the M19 guerrilla. During the new century, Colombia achieved the right-wing government that openly fought the FARC guerrilla. This period is characterized by high economic growth and the demobilization of paramilitary groups, the strength of the Colombian state, the weakness of communist guerrillas, and the excess from the military force against the civil population. This period ends with the signature of the peace agreement in 2016. According to this change, the city implements several projects transforming Medellin into one of the most progressive Latin American cities, with initiatives as programs of memory conservation and cultural alternatives, library parks, the metro, the tram, the gondola life visitor collector, and the bikes lane. In the case of Antioquia, in 1996, the first technology-based business incubator, the Science and Technology Center, was developed to promote social dynamization. In 2004, innovation became a priority of the public administration of Medellin, and they launched a government program with the name Culture E, Culture of Entrepreneurship. Simultaneously, a significant public investment was made in infrastructure, including the construction and modernization of public spaces, social libraries, and parks. Another interesting result of these policies is the project Medellin City Cluster, committed to create competitive advantage for local business. The project started promoting collaboration among companies to generate local synergies and compete in the global economy. People in Medellin recognized early that knowledge creation was immediately related with entrepreneurship and economic growth. Other example of industry in the Public Services Company of Medellin, Empresa de Servicios Públicos Medellin, EPM, that was created on August 6, 1955 from decision of the Administrative Council of Medellin to merge in a single establishment the four companies that provide public energy, aqueduct, seawall, and telephone services. In 1999, the telephone services was separated from the main company to form the subsidiary UNE EPM Telecomunicaciones. Since 1998, EPM legally became a public and industrial and commercial company, although it's 100% property of the city of Medellin. EPM assets are separated from those of the city. It is an independent company with its own corporate governance that participates in the stock market, but now EPM has been at the forefront of reputation crisis. EPM has been at the forefront of reputational crisis in the recent years. The situation is due to a problem in the hydroelectric project it leaded north of Hidroituango. The project is a dam developing on the Cauca River in the municipality of Hidroituango in Antioquia. But in April 2018, one of the auxiliary tunnels of Hidroituango dam collapsed, generating the reservoir overflow, overflowing the possible river overflow. The project manager decided to flood the energy room, but the measure was not enough to help the water. The overflow of the Cauca River caused a flood in the nearby municipalities, affecting more than 25,000 people who live near to the river, who had evacuated their homes. According to the prosecutor, one of the most questionable facts was awarding the project to EPM as a contractor while being a shareholder. The mayor of Medellin for this period between 2008-2011 and 2012-2015, the governor, the manager of EPM, and several members of the board of directors were declared responsible of the investigation and is still in progress. The project EPM and the local administration are trying to solve the problems to finish the project. As Hidroituango is a critical project in Colombian infrastructure, the crisis has generated a political controversy and several politicians that have taken advantage to promote their candidatures. In the 2019 mayor race for Medellin, Hidroituango, and the relationship among business and the administration were key points of discussion. Medellin got a new administration with new risks and new boards of directors. Daniel Quintero is a young politician born in 1918 with undergraduate studies in electronic engineering and a master's degree in public administration. Between 2015 to 2016, he was the CEO of Impulsa, a Colombian government agency created to promote productivity, entrepreneurship, and innovation. In 2020, Quintero named EPM CEO and 3 of the 9 members of the board of directors. During the first semester of 2020, Quintero and his newly appointed CEO decided to change the company's main enterprise objective, ignoring the board of directors. Later in July 2020, they both decided to sue the consortium in shares of building Ituzaingó. Again, without considering the board of directors, this two-factor caused the resignation of the board of directors. According to the board, Quintero was negligent the company's board opinion, he was ignoring the corporate governance, and he was engaged in the project. Quintero argues that there was project in Medellin as sex and the public interest. He also argued that the controversy and opposition he was receiving was a conspiracy by Grupo Empresarial Antioqueño. We don't pretend to have an opinion about what exactly is happening in this scenario, nor do we want to take a position in this political debate. In this case, we want to discuss what could happen if collaboration among business and the public administration is broken. If Quintero is right, and Medellin's collaboration between business and politicians is an example of corruption collaboration, could the new administration provide a decent and transparent alternative? Now, to close this presentation of the case, students are expected to analyze how false theories may lead to erroneous explanation of problems in societies. Two examples such as false theory are the conspiracy theory and pessimism. In other words, the theory that problems in society are explained by the presence of bad people, conspirations, and the theory that problems are insoluble but evitable. We further propose the reader to evaluate the concept of the chronic capitalism and where it is a correct explanation of the problem of collaboration between public and private sectors in the case of Medellin. However, they are just some ideas to guide the discussion. We expect the student to analyze the case and multiple perspectives and propose explanation to the causes of its problems and possible solutions. Thank you for seeing and listening. See you next time.